We are taking a closer look at a topic you've probably heard a lot about lately. We are talking about tariffs. Thanks for watching us here on WGRZ+. I'm Lauren Hall. What are tariffs? Why should you care? And how could they impact you? We'll cover those questions and get you answers. First up, what exactly is a tariff? Channel 2's Scott Levin explains.
Simply put, tariffs are a type of tax that governments put on items brought in from other countries. There are several reasons why a country might impose a tariff on another. One reason is making imported goods more expensive, which causes products made in the U.S. to have more of a competitive advantage. Take cars, for example. On the global market, it may be cheaper to buy a car made in Mexico than one made here in the U.S. Tariffs would make these Mexican-built cars more expensive than American-made cars, meaning cars made in America are cheaper by comparison. Second, tariffs can also be used to punish other countries for unfairly subsidizing their own companies. Research from top economists suggests that broad tariffs, like the ones that President Trump is proposing, don't work as well as tariffs targeting specific industries. Those opposed to tariffs argue they cut jobs and raise prices unnecessarily. A study from MIT, Harvard, and the World Bank found Trump's tariffs during his first term eliminated farming jobs across the country. Countries the U.S. puts tariffs on also tend to retaliate with their own tariffs on American goods. An analysis by the Patterson Institute for International Economics found that the president's proposed tariffs could cost the average American household over $2,600 a year in the form of higher prices at the stores. The Trump administration points to the fact that median household income went up after he put his original tariffs in place. And while President Joe Biden was in office, his administration chose to keep most or expand the tariffs after President Trump left office.
So here's where the tariff fight stands and 3 things you need to know. First, the Trump administration has imposed 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports. Second, the U.S. is imposing a 25% tariff on most imports from Canada and Mexico, plus a 10% tariff on Canadian energy products. And third, a 20% tariff has been placed on all Chinese imports. There are also plans to tax imports from the European Union, Brazil, and South Korea by charging reciprocal rates starting in April. And countries like China, Canada, Mexico, and the European Union have responded with their own retaliatory measures. For example, the European Union has targeted U.S. products from Republican-led states in response to the steel and aluminum tariffs. And as our Rob Hackford reports, our closest trade partner, Canada, is returning the favor.
Well, this is our 60-inch mill. We're processing some coil for customer up in Canada.
Rigidized Metals president and CEO Rick Smith has been buying from and selling to Canadian companies for decades.
Typically $3 million a year.
And whether U.S. or retaliatory tariffs, he says neither are good for business.
The tariff is already, just the anticipation of tariffs creates an upward pressure on pricing. So our price increase has already, been going into effect since January. Our prices are already up 20%, both in aluminum and steel.
Potentially impacting customers all down the line, from his shop to final product. This stainless steel is bound to be a restroom divider, and although Smith says stainless likely won't feel the same hit,
well, Canada does not make stainless steel, so they would be unwise to have a retaliatory tariff on stainless steel. So the big question remains is, if that does start to increase prices of stainless steel just because it's trickling.
Carbon steel like this stack from Canada will be impacted on both ends. Canadian leaders sharing this warning.
Canada is not the one that is ultimately starting this war. President Trump's tariffs against you are causing that. And there are no winners in a trade war.
And when uncertainty rules the roost, it's never a good environment for businesses or communities.
Especially communities like Western New York, because traditionally Canada has been a stable partner. But with a new and unpredictable administration and all this talk about tariffs,
You know, you've let the genie out of the bottle, and the worldwide implications are that it may not be as easy as we think to put that genie or leprechaun, given the season, back in the bottle.
And the U.S. tariff on imported steel and aluminum could drive up costs for breweries that rely on aluminum cans. Channel 2's Alyssa Clausel explains how this could make your favorite brews more expensive.
Inside of Resurgence Brewing Company in downtown Buffalo,
We're bringing truckloads into this all the time, and so it's something, obviously it's a vital part of our organization and operation.
they roll down the machines single file.
So here you can see all the cans.
Aluminum cans, a product that will now be impacted by the 25% tariff imposed on countries like our neighbors to the north, Canada.
We get all of it currently from Canada. And on the other side of it, our biggest cog is our grain or barley. We buy all of our barley for making beer from Canada as well.
Jeff Ware is the president of the company. He says local businesses like Resurgence are going to be the ones footing the bill for those imposed tariffs.
Our costs went way up on everything after COVID, and they stayed up. And so adding an additional 25% on two of our biggest items is going to drastically affect our cost of goods sold and our bottom line.
And well, why not source American aluminum or barley? Well, Ware says the costs just won't match up.
So we want to get it somewhere that's relatively close to us because we might be able to get a better price farther away, but it might cost too much to ship it here.
And so Ware says if countries like Canada end up increasing the cost of goods because of these tariffs, you might be the one to feel it the next time you grab a six-pack.
My guess is myself and other brewers are going to have to pass this along at some point because there's just not enough margin left to stay in business without passing some of these additional costs on.
And the tariffs on steel could also affect the agricultural industry. 2 on Your Side's Dave McKinley spoke with a dairy farmer about the potential impacts locally.
Lauren, down here on the farm, folks don't have a lot of time to wring their hands with worry, nor do they when it comes to talk of tariffs. Stein Farms is a 3,600-acre dairy farm with 1,600 cows. They've seen it all over 3 generations. But when it comes to the threat of Canada imposing tariffs on products they produce, they note Canada already limits the amount of dairy products that can be imported to protect their own farms.
I think some of the bigger tariffs that are more intimidating going on out there is this conversation about electric, because we do use quite a bit of electric to be able to run a dairy farm, fans and all the rest of it. The other one is the steel side of the conversation. If we've got tariffs on steel and someone's got to buy equipment, how are you going to build that equipment? It's all made from steel. Yeah. So those are the ones that I do believe are large ticket items that are going to be intimidating for the industry.
Another concern for farmers may be tariffs on potash used to produce fertilizer, but many have already purchased their supplies for the coming growing year. They also do have some concerns about any cuts that may be coming to the Department of Agriculture, which they say is vital to ensuring the continued safety of consumable farm products in the U.S., which they will tell you are the safest anywhere in the world.
And when we return, how tariffs could impact how much we pay for everything from electricity to gasoline. That and more is straight ahead on WGRZ+. The recent round of tariffs between the U.S. and Canada has put the focus on how our power grids are connected between the two countries. Channel 2's Ron Plants explains.
As we previously reported, the New York State Independent System Operator is an agency which coordinates the electric power grid in terms of suppliers or power generation sources, and the utility companies like National Grid and NYSEG, which supply power to us as customers. And they have told us that indeed power generated in Canada, often from massive hydropower dams or other sources, does flow into the U.S., including New York State. While it is now on hold, Ontario Premier Doug Ford declared on Monday he was imposing that 25% surcharge on power from his province in retaliation for U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods. That brought this shared power relationship more into focus. Premier Ford stated previously and again Monday that 1.5 million homes and businesses in New York, Michigan, and Minnesota get Ontario-produced power, and that if the surcharge was levied, the impact cost would be $400,000 per day. However, the actual impact is hard to gauge. The Premier threw out a figure, but we in his office could not confirm the actual potential cost on a utility customer's monthly bill here in Western New York. The U.S. Energy Information Administration stated in a 2023 report that the actual electric flow back and forth between Canada and the U.S. is less than 1% of the country's respective total power generation capacity. That federal agency also noting shared power is important to balance the power grid for reliability, especially for Canada, with hydropower generation dropping off in times of drought. The agency report indicates the overall values $3.2 billion for Canadian electricity coming into the U.S. That trade actually dropped significantly in 2022. That compares with $1.2 billion for U.S. generated power flowing into Canada.
And while Ontario backed off on retaliatory electric tariffs, there are still questions and concerns about other forms of imported energy. Our Ron Plans continues that part of the conversation.
Signs show the pipelines bringing Canadian crude oil into the U.S. under the Niagara River, some of it flowing 100 miles down to the United Refining Refinery to our south in Warren, Pennsylvania. Also, this map showing interconnected energy flow between the two countries, with other Midwest refineries producing our gasoline and heating oil.
Western New York does rely on some Canadian crude oil and refined products simply because some of Buffalo's products can come from refineries nearby that do rely on Canadian crude oil. There's a couple refineries in Ohio.
And at this point, a 10% U.S. charge tariff on Canadian-sourced oil is on hold until April 2nd. If the White House does go ahead to impose that tariff, there have been projections of adding 20 cents or more to a gallon of gas in some New England states and upstate New York to our east. But perhaps less of an impact here, specifically in Western New York with the oil flow.
Given the economic volatility that's ensued, it would probably be far lower than that, maybe to the tune of 5 or 10 cents a gallon.
That's a prediction, and DeHaan says normally gas prices go up this time of year with the arrival of spring and warmer weather as refineries switch to lighter gasoline blends to reduce pollution. But with the tough tariff talk on both sides of the border, Ontario Premier Doug Ford saying this yesterday with another implied threat about cutting off or taxing oil flow, as he previously did with electricity to the states.
Remember the 4.3 million barrels of oil that's coming from Alberta, as Premier Smith said on her comments, I think over the last couple of days, she has the trump card. Give approval for an export tax. And I know the Americans, all of a sudden their gas prices go up 90 to $1 a gallon. They will lose their minds.
Canada, in essence, would be shooting itself in the foot if it turned off those in-bridge pipelines that run down from Alberta to Minnesota, through Michigan, down into Chicago, and then east back into Ontario. So, you know, there's been a lot of rhetoric. This is kind of a race to the bottom.
And the back and forth over tariffs caused the stock market to tumble this week. So what does this mean for your money? Channel 2's Courtney Courtwright has advice from a financial advisor.
Tony Ogorek is the founder and president of Ogorek Wealth Management in Williamsville. He says they've been busy with calls and emails recently regarding the stock market fluctuations.
Markets abhor any kind of lack of confidence, any environment, any kind of change, which is destabilizing. You know, they like to know that there's certainty.
He suggests looking at what you have before making any impulsive decisions.
In a downdraft, which we're experiencing now, you will then be exposed to more risk. A retiree or someone who's taking a draw from your account. The last thing you want to do is to have to hit or sell depreciated securities. So you should have, in an environment like this, at least 12 months worth of cash, either in the bank, in your brokerage account, what have you.
Some of President Donald Trump's policies, like tariffs, are driving the uncertainty in the market.
The narrative changes from day to day, and that's really this uncertainty is what the markets abhor. This is what corporations do not like because they lay out a lot of money. And for consumers also, they need to know they're on most people are living paycheck to paycheck.
Wall Street's big sell-off is leaving people concerned the economy could go into a recession.
And now it seems as though the odds of a recession, hard landing, are increasing because of the change in policies that we've seen.
In a White House press briefing on Tuesday, the president's secretary responded to recession concerns, saying the administration is working to grow the economy.
The American people, CEOs and people on Wall Street and on Main Street should bet on this president. He is a deal maker, he is a businessman, and he's doing what's right for our country. He wants to restore wealth to the United States of America.
Still to come, how tariffs could impact how much you pay for your next home renovation project and even your next houseplant. That and more is ahead on WGRZ+. If you've been planning a home renovation, you might want to factor in possible rising costs due to tariffs. Experts say imported materials like steel and lumber could drive up prices for construction projects. 2 on Your Side's Alyssa Clausel spoke with vendors at the Buffalo Home Show about what they're seeing.
The sounds of home improvement. Echoing from the Buffalo Convention Center today ahead of the annual Home Show.
Lots to see, a lot of exhibitors to check out, especially if you're needing anything done around your home, obviously, or getting ready for spring and summer, your lawn.
Event organizer Kelsey Jackson says that the hundreds of vendors in attendance could see roughly 10,000 visitors if the numbers are anything like last year. All of those eyes prompting vendors to put their very best on display.
We kind of bring out the best and just to cater to everybody's needs.
But as they prepare to pitch their services to homeowners, vendors may also have to navigate the question on possibly every consumer's mind as of late. Will the tariffs on some of the U.S.'s biggest trade partners affect prices? Poolbright technician Zachary Hopper says everything that they source is domestic, so that won't be a problem for them.
We're American, for sure. So on the hot tubs, we have made in USA, so each spa that we sell is made in USA and assembled here in Vegas.
And when it comes to the business of remodeling,
we basically do kitchens, bathrooms, doors, windows, anything around the house.
Alex Martin with Nitram Enterprises says that the price you pay on goods will ultimately be up to you.
I pick everything up for them. This is how much it is. If they want a more expensive thing, you're going to be paying for the more expensive thing.
So regardless, it's the price is always going to be just passed on to the customer, regardless.
Yep.
And new tariffs could also take a toll on local floral shops. As much as 80% of flowers sold in the U.S. come from overseas. 2 on Your Side's Andy Payton tells us how this could bloom into higher prices for shop owners.
There's something therapeutic about walking in to put a plant on it on Elmwood Avenue.
All they need is good soil, good light, and then watering, and they'll grow for you and be happy.
It's why Johanna Dominguez ditched her desk job 5 years ago to be surrounded by life.
Especially in Buffalo in the winter when it's kind of snowy and gray. It's so nice to just be around tropical paradise every day.
But the day-to-day as of late has been anything but paradise.
It's nerve-wracking, frustrating. It's just like we just want an answer of like what's actually going to be happening.
With the constant back and forth from the Trump administration, imposing tariffs and then revoking those tariffs on countries like Canada, a major supplier to plant shops here in Buffalo, with almost 100% of Canada's plants and flower exports going to the United States.
All the local houseplant shops and greenhouses that get plants for their shops are getting them from the 4 suppliers in Canada.
Johanna knows she's sort of lucky. Unlike some industries, her business hasn't fully felt the financial impacts of these tariffs yet, but having to anticipate them is making it impossible to plan.
It is. It is. Yeah, every day waking up, oh, am I going to be tariffing? Oh, am I going to have to raise my prices?
And switching to only domestic products isn't the answer either, as even the plants from places like Florida still have ties to China.
What happens in the plant industry is someone comes up with a cool plant or they find a cool plant. They take that plant and they clone it in this process called tissue culture. All the tissue culture labs are in China and India.
Johanna doesn't know what the true impacts of these tariffs will be.
Plants are very forgiving.
But she does know regardless, it's already left a scar.
And I wish our government could be as forgiving as plants.
While there's much uncertainty over the new tariffs, one thing is certain: local businesses rely on Canadian visitors. The growing concerns raise the question if tourism could be impacted by these changes. Channel 2's Courtney Courtwright spoke with the president and CEO of Destination Niagara to find out.
John Percy is the CEO and president of Destination Niagara. He says it is too early to tell what kind of impacts tariffs might have and if they will even hit so-called tourism products. Those are things like hotel stays and attraction tickets. He says there are a lot of unknowns, but things that are imported or exported that could have costs associated with them, like food, could have an impact.
Where I think the effect could come down the road that could increase, hotel cost, restaurant costs, and so forth, is if food gets impacted or things that they have to purchase for their everyday existence, whether in hotels, restaurants, etc. So I think there's byproducts of any industry, like a food industry, that will ultimately impact the cost of travel. And so that could be very impactful down the road, but still too early to tell.
Percy says the big takeaway here is this is a wait and see period. It's something they are keeping a close eye on. Percy also says he will be heading to Washington, D.C. in a couple of weeks to talk about some of the actions that might impact tourism.
We thank you for joining us here on WGRZ Plus as we break down all things tariffs. We hope this helped. Be sure to look for updates on the ongoing trade war here on WGRZ Plus, as well as resources that we've shared on our website, WGRZ.com. I'm Lauren Hall. Thanks for watching.